Okay, well, we weren't going to get out of 4 episodes of talking about women in the Bible without mentioning the fact that you and everyone that you talk to and everyone that you tell to vote won't let women get abortions.
Right.
It's mean because they need them a lot, many and often.
Okay.
Safely.
Okay.
And you won't let that happen.
Okay.
So why do you hate women?
You derive that I hate women.
Yes.
Because I'm anti-abortion?
Absolutely.
All right, so I hate all women.
All of them.
Including my own
because
wife?
All women need abortions. All the time. Forever and always.
My wife would disagree.
Well, she's not here.
She is not here. I kind of wish she was at this point. But I mean, no, I don't hate all women. So if you're asking me about abortion, then yeah, I am against abortion.
Well, that's mean. Why isn't it mean?
Why is it mean?
Why do you think it's not mean?
Why do I think it's not mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's taking life.
I'm asking you this question because it's a big women versus the church issue, and yeah,
I know. I know.
Okay.
And so, and I know it's like the idea of it's my body,
yes,
my choice.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. Okay. But if I believe that scripturally life begins at conception and is that immediately that there's sanctity of life from conception until death, then I have to make a stand for life.
Okay.
I have to.
You have to.
I have to
hate women.
No, not at all. And
okay.
And I think there's, when we talk about abortion, I think there's like real legitimate questions that need to be asked, and that individuals like myself should have to give answers to. You know what? Because the issues I think get to the discussions of things like, well, what if I'm raped?
Right.
What if my parents are forcing me to, or they'll kick me out of the house?
Forcing me to what?
To have an abortion.
Oh, okay.
And so there's really legitimate, the whole, the medical emergencies, there's so many legitimate questions that need to be discussed, need to be answered. So hopefully we can do, like you said, hopefully we can do a whole episode just kind of fleshing these questions out. Because I think these questions are really important.
But the church seems to not really care about the questions.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I know. And I think that's the thing. Like, so I had a friend who's part of a kind of pro-life movement. And they were looking at like starting a podcast for this pro-life movement. And he was like, what are the topics we should talk about? And I put down like this list of like 10 questions that I thought were like really legitimate questions of kind of pushing back a little bit. Like, hey, if you don't address these things, you're being disingenuous. Like if you don't address the issues of what if I'm raped? If you don't address the issues of, well, I'm going to be kicked out of my house, if I don't go along with having the abortion. What if, so I think that there's so many like big issues that have to be discussed. So I want us to discuss those things.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. If the church is not willing to have those conversations, women should absolutely be pissed.
Okay.
I mean, like calling it for what it is, women have a right to be upset about the fact that the church, we can't just hold the Bible and just thump people over the head with it and be like, well, this is what it says. It's not loving and caring. It's not compassionate. It's not empathetic. And so I do think that we have to be willing to have conversations and discussions. And yes, obviously at the end of the day, I'm ending up at a pro-life position. And I do so because of how I really, truly believe that the scriptures that I read are inspired by God. And therefore, and in those scriptures, life begins at conception, and I believe in a sanctity of life. And so I would not want to do anything to harm life, if that's the case. If I believe it's sanctified, and there's sanctity in that life. And so, but at the same time, I have to be willing to look people in the eye and have honest conversations and discussions about, well, I hear you, but what about these situations and these circumstances?
Okay.
And so, and if church has not been willing, yeah, women should be upset. Or if, and women have probably experienced times and moments in churches where they were, like you get pregnant outside of marriage and you get looked at funny. And you feel like you're being judged because of it. And it causes you to leave the church because of that hurt. My wife, she's, published a few books, and the first, they're novels. And the first one actually deals with some of this issue of how someone feels judged because of a pregnancy, and how they feel unwanted because, or unloved or not accepted at the church because they've become pregnant, and the church hurt that causes. And so that's real stuff. And my hope is that you could hear empathetic, compassionate responses from people in the church, and that aren't just, not caring or not loving toward women. But in regards to specifically, I want to have an abortion. You won't, quote unquote, let me, or I want an abortion. Why can't you just be okay with that? And it really, for me, it's just not a complicated answer. It's simply because there is life there, and we can't willingly choose to take life.
So why doesn't the church want to answer any of the questions and get into it?
I don't think the present day church wants to avoid all those things.
Okay. But they used to.
I think historically the church has just been bad at answering or being a space where discussions like this can be had,
right,
without people. Okay. I don't know. I just feel like historically the church has not been a great space for people to have these kind of discussions. I felt like, for example, Timothy Keller, he's passed away now, but Timothy Keller is a pastor in New York City, and Keller created this space of just open questions and dialogue at his church. I think they did it every Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken, where he would literally just sit up there and just answer questions. Man, that's awesome. For a pastor to be willing to do that. And I mean,
you're willing to do that.
I am willing to do that.
Even though you hate women.
I do not hate women.
No questions from women in this church.
Ask my wife. I do not hate women. Oh, Lord. You can ask my mama, too. So, but I think that, historically you're right. I don't think these questions there's maybe been a space to ask these questions. I think the space is getting there now. I still think some people want to stay away from things that they deem political, but this to me is not political. This to me is about life. It's as much of a quote unquote religious question as anything else. And so, so we need to welcome those discussions.
Okay.
I don't hate women, even though I am against abortion.
Okay.
I'm just for life. Okay. And
women life.
Women. I'm for all life.
Women, lady, fetus, woman
life. Yes.
And the dude ones too.
Yes.
However, you say it's getting better now.
Okay.
But I feel like if there was at this point in time in church existence,
okay,
that if women had any questions about any of this, or were like thinking about this, or wondering what to do, that there wouldn't be a lot of people that want to talk about this at the church.
Okay.
And so what do?
Okay. So you're saying that you actually feel like it's not that way.
I feel like it's not that way enough for any women to feel comfortable to try to go talk about that at church.
Okay. All right. And I do see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Especially given the history of things.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I mean, I don't know if you're overly wrong either. I think in the fact that people have that perception.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What I guess I'm saying is I think there's many more churches that are willing to have those conversations, pastors who are willing to have those conversations, church members willing to have those conversations in an empathetic, compassionate, and truthful way. And I think some of it is just overcoming the perception that they're not willing to have that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're a woman, you want to have the conversation, like, ask, and if the church doesn't want to talk about it, go to a church that will.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because I promise you, there's a lot of churches out there that are willing to have that conversation.